Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to write a literature essay, and specifically we're going to talk about how to write a literature essay for AQA's Literature Paper 1, which involves Macbeth, it involves Jekyll and Hyde, and lots of other texts. It's Shakespeare in the 19th century novel, so there's a bunch of different texts. This method that I'm going to give you today will help set you up to get decent marks on all of those texts, right? And if you're finding this very difficult, it is a very difficult essay to write, but if you've got to write a literature essay, if you've never written a literature essay before, this is a really useful method to go through when you're doing it. Okay, so first off, let's have a look at an example question. Okay, I'm going to walk you through an example with Jekyll and Hyde, but this works for Macbeth, works for any of those other literature texts, this technique. Okay, this is what it looks like. We've got an extract, we've got a question down at the bottom, right? First thing I'm going to ask you to do is just pause the video and just read the extract. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've done that. Now, first thing that we do is not read the extract. That seems like it would be the logical thing to do. But step one is always to go to the question down at the bottom. Now, the reason you go for the question is it tells you what you're going to be looking for in the extract, and it cuts out a bunch of work that you're going to do, right? If you read the extract and look at the question, then you're going to have to go back through the extract again, right? Makes sense. Just go to the question at the bottom first. Questions look something like this. Starting with this extract, how does Stevenson, or whatever writer, Shakespeare, present the differences between Jekyll and Hyde in this case, right? And it says down at the bottom, write about how Stevenson presents the differences in this extract, how the differences are presented in the novel as a whole. And it'll always say that. So write about the extract, write about the novel as a whole. And it'll be, how is this character presented, or how is this theme presented, how is anger, ambition, whatever presented. Now, ideally, we're looking to get 2 different points on whatever theme or character they've given us. So in this case, it says the differences between Jekyll and Hyde. We're going to try and come up with a point on Jekyll and a point on Hyde. And then eventually, once we've talked about it in the extract, we're going to try and relate it to things that happen in the rest of the novel. Okay, so step 1, we've looked at the question. Step 2 is to read and annotate the extract. Now, you've already had a little read of that extract there, okay? I'm going to show you what I do as I was reading the extract. I have a pen in hand, and as I'm reading, I'm starting to annotate things, circle, underline things, and label up things that they tell me about the question, right? So I'm looking for things about Jekyll, I'm looking for things about Hyde. What I'm looking for, if I can, words or phrases that tell me something about that character or that theme. I'm looking for literary techniques, if I can, so similes, metaphors, all of that kind of thing. And don't just label up the simile. Once you've written simile, because it is one, tell me, what does it tell you about Jekyll? Does it make Jekyll seem very friendly or very aggressive or very nasty? That's what we want. So as you're annotating, you find a little phrase, you underline it, you write a little note off at the side. Never just circle something, always write a little note. What's the effect? What does it make you think about the character or theme? Have you got a technical thing in there? And also, if you can, we want to look for context. So how is this extract showing that the world is different at the time that it's written, in the early 1600s for Shakespeare, or the Victorian era for Jekyll and Hyde, right? How is it different to now? Okay. Now, in this extract, I'm going to give you a couple of little bits that I looked at and bits that I kind of came up with. For Jekyll, there's a bunch of stuff towards the end, but we're going to start with Hyde because he's up at the top, right? This little extract, if you didn't pause it and read it, is the bit where Hyde kills Sir Danvers Carew, right? Spoiler alert if you've not read the novel already. He kills Sir Danvers Carew, and it's written from his perspective. It's from the chapter at the end of the novel where Jekyll / Hyde talks about what it was like to experience doing that. Now, up at the top, Hyde really enjoys this murder, and you can tell it because of things like, he says, with a transport of glee, I mauled the unresisting body, tasting delight from every blow, right? So he's got glee in there, right? Now, what you're looking to do here is be as positive as possible with the language. The language will be difficult. There might be bits you don't understand, but you might know the word glee, so he's enjoying himself. And also, I mauled the unresisting body. So mauled, we can tell, is pretty aggressive and nasty. He's enjoying being aggressive, using that verb, I mauled, right? That's the technique he's using, right? So, and you can tell he enjoys violence. Also, if I'm looking for context, at the start here, instantly the spirit of hell awoke in me and I raged. Now, spirit of hell is not something that we would generally talk about today, but for strongly Christian Victorians in Victorian Britain, Robert Louis Stevenson's audience who are reading this novel, that would be something that would resonate really strongly with them. The fact that he's talking about hell makes it seem like this is particularly extreme, and it's used in the context of the time, right? So those are the sorts of things that we're looking at for. There are loads of different bits on that with Hyde, and he's really enjoying doing what he's doing. Down at the bottom, Once Jekyll kind of comes to his senses and Hyde kind of runs back to Jekyll's house, takes the potion, turns back into Jekyll, Jekyll is instantly exceptionally guilty, right? And we can see this with phrases like streaming tears of gratitude and remorse, right? Now, even if you're not entirely sure on gratitude and remorse, if he's streaming tears, right, you can tell he's very upset. It's extreme upset, extreme guilt about what's going on. And he also says in this that he lifted his clasped hands to God. Now, that's a massive contrast to the spirit of hell awaking at the start. So that's going to be really useful when we come to write an essay. Now, once I've done all that annotation, and hopefully I've got some annotation throughout the extract, there's no big chunks that are kind of blank. I've found bits at the beginning, middle, and end. I'm going to try and bullet point a plan for my essay, right? That's stage 3. Okay, so in stage 3, I'm looking for 2 big ideas. And the reason is, in the mark scheme, it talks about coming up with an argument, right? Some sort of argument, some sort of developing point that you got to make when you write your essay. So in this case, if I'm kind of splitting it into 2, I want a point on Hyde, I want a point on Jekyll, right? So my 2 points are that Hyde is incredibly violent and he enjoys it. It's quite a subtle point that it's not just Hyde is bad, right? He's violent and enjoys it. It's an idea with a bit of layering to it, a bit of sophistication. And then Jekyll, in contrast to that, has extreme guilt about what's going on. He's not just guilty, he's extremely guilty. Remember our streaming tears. He's not just sobbing a bit, streaming tears, right? So Hyde is really violent and enjoys it. Jekyll has extreme guilt. That's going to be my argument in my essay. Now, we've got to come back to our second bullet point of our question, which is where it says, how are the differences presented in the rest of the novel? Okay, so what I've got to try and do is link those points to something that happened in the rest of the novel. Now, my Hyde point, where he's violent and really enjoys it, I'm going to link that to the bit where he tramples over the child at the start of the novel, reported about him trampling over a child at the start of the novel. And what I've got in here is a quotation that I've learned. You're not going to have the novel with you in the exam, so you're going to have to learn quotations that I can use. I'm going to talk about him trampling calmly over this child, which is a similar sort of thing, right? It's very, very violent, tramples over a kid, but he's very calm when he does it. Not really enjoying it, but a similar sort of idea, right? And with Jekyll, with his extreme guilt, I'm going to write about the bit in the novel where Utterson goes to see him, and Jekyll is clearly in the aftermath of that extreme guilt, right? And he looks incredibly ill, and we can describe that and talk about that. So that gives me my structure for my essay, right? I've got my 2 main points. I've got a couple of bits that I can link to the rest of the novel with it. And that's where I come into stage 4, which is actually writing the essay. All I do there is, in the first sentence, I sum up my bullet point plan. So in this extract and the rest of the novel, Hyde is very violent and he clearly enjoys that, whereas Jekyll feels extreme guilt. That's my first sentence. And then I just prove what I've got to say with all of those quotations that I've annotated. Make sure I put that context in there. Make sure I put that technical language analysis in there.